I am curious. I mean, so being at that level of competitive athletics in swimming, obviously you're one of the best swimmers in the world, or you were at that point, and I'm sure you still could blow most people out of the water. But SEAL training is typically revered as incredibly difficult aquatic training. Was there any part of SEAL training water related that you found at all challenging?
Not honestly. Yeah. And I got this question before also, just from some friends and colleagues, and I actually had it at the end of Hell Week. And a lot of people assume, because I was a swimmer, that going through BUD/S and the fact that we're a maritime-based, special operations organization, that BUD/S was a cakewalk or something like that for me. It was absolutely not. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. The aquatic part wasn't, but I went from training for the better part of a decade, twice a day. You're a former swimmer. You probably have some people in the audience who are swimmers. It's a grueling sport. Twice a day in the pool, a couple hours every session. So it's essentially like a 0G environment. And BUD/S is what? I mean, how many Gs do you think you're putting on with all the shit we're carrying and boats on heads and logs and all that? So that crushed me. The swimming, fortunately, didn't. I think the best thing that swimming did for me going into BUD/S was not just aquatic competency, it was having some hard-ass coaches. Yeah. I had some old school dudes who were my coaches who really, came to their coaching prowess in the 70s and 80s. And so it was sort of like, I don't know, the Rocky movies. Like, these guys were hard. You're putting it in. This is like Rocky IV. You're training in the snow, in a water context here, to get ready to swim the mile at the Olympic Games. So that hardcore nature in swimming, I think, and having that type of coach was pretty translatable going to BUD/S and with the instructor cadre, probably like when you were an instructor. I mean, there's a standard that the community wants to uphold, rightfully so. And they care and love the community so deeply that their hardness on the kids and on the people going through is not out of place of spite or wanting people to do poorly. It's out of pure love for the community and pure love for their brothers. I think it's very similar to actually the coaches that I had, guys like Mark Schubert, coaches like Bill Rose, coaches like Dave Salo. They were hard on me, but I think that was because they cared so much. Yeah. It's probably the same thing in anything in life. The people that are the hardest on you care the most about you, and it's easy to lose sight of that oftentimes day in and day out when you're going through the shit. But if you zoom out, those are the people in life I'm the most thankful for.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's I'm always fascinated by that transfer of mental toughness from a sport like swimming, and I don't think there's really that I can think of anything else like it. I mean, even track, cross country, et cetera. Like you still feel the other competitors. They're kind of right there. You can talk shit a little bit.
Totally.
You can hear them. And so with swimming, there's this weird, almost meditation-like state
100%
in the water that like nobody else can push you. I mean, when you're in the water, I mean, your coach can yell at you in between sets and whatever else, but like it forces you and separates any person that has even a slight question about themselves in terms of being able to push themselves hard. It just weeds you right the fuck out.
It does. It's. I think I'm biased because I'm a former swimmer and a distance guy, so I'm biased with this, and I don't have as much experience with other sports. But I think it's unique in the ways that you mentioned. You're alone with your thoughts, and you're alone with the pain. Like that could be that's to me the hardest thing ever. Yeah. You don't have any external stimulation. Certainly on breaks between sets, you can maybe talk a little shit to your buddy who you're swimming against, or the coach can sort of give you some grief and tell you some things to work on. But for the preponderance of a practice, you're staring at the black line at the bottom of the pool nonstop for hours. And so that gets pretty lonely.
Yeah.
It gets pretty difficult, especially as you're on rep whatever of dozens or hundreds of reps in many cases, and you're alone with that pain.
Yeah.
And also the oxygen deprivation, I'm sure, has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Some of the most vivid daydreams, I guess maybe is the right, or daytime meditative experiences perhaps that I've ever had are in the pool following that black line, just because you're sort of hypnotizing yourself. You're out of breath. You're holding your breath off of every single wall. I still look back on some of the practices and just think of the random childhood memories that just snap back into my mind out of nowhere. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to blur fact from fiction in some of those things as they come back. And so I think it's a pretty grueling sport, unlike track and field or cycling or other things that are endurance sports as well. You can sort of talk to somebody. Even now, I work out pretty much every morning with a former EOD senior chief who retired. He was my neighbor across the alley in Coronado. And half the time when we're running, we're talking. We're catching up on the day, sort of like a therapy session and all this stuff on work and what's going on in the world and all that. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
We do swim, every couple weeks, but we obviously can't talk to each other. We just sort of like do our own thing.
Yeah. I imagine, or I guess I'm curious, could you jump in a pool right now and break 5 minutes in a 500
No
free?
fucking way.
No way?
No fucking way. I'm embarrassed to say that because I'm embarrassed to say that. I remember the first time I broke 5 minutes in the 500. I think I was 12 or 13.
Jesus.
And but nowadays, no, absolutely not. And I'm swimming the 4th of July swim in Coronado. I did it a couple years ago. It's a 3K, and so I'm a little nervous about that. I'm like, shit, man, 3K? That's swimming. That's a long ways. Running that's far enough. But I'll get through it. But like, obviously, getting through it's different than sort of like the competitive DNA that we have. Like, I don't want to just get through it. I want to like fucking win that thing.
Yeah,
but I'm not training to win it, so it is what it is.
Yeah, the expectation for you doing anything in the water, being a fucking Olympic medalist,
Totally.
Is as high as
It's pretty high. And it's like, I don't know if the pressure. It's all self-imposed at the end of the day. We're our own worst enemy in life. I'm my own worst enemy, my own demons, my own thoughts, my own expectations of what I think good enough is.
Yeah.
And I think I've been fortunate to, have been at that level, at least in swimming, where the expectation's pretty high.
Yeah.
And so anything below that is considered a failure in my mind. And that's not logical. That's not realistic. But, especially as we get older. But yeah, I go into these things and it's like any other team guy. Like, you have a team guy, never played soccer, never played ultimate frisbee, whatever, but you get out there and their expectation for themselves and probably of everybody around is they're going to fucking win.
Yeah.
And the reality is like, they're not, they haven't trained for that.
Yeah.
Like it's not even, it's like a perishable skill and it's a skill you have to develop in the first place in any sport, in any discipline. Yeah. So I think there's this expectation with team guys in general that anything they do, they're going to be like in the movies, like winning the whole thing, like a Mission Impossible or whatever. Yeah. And it's funny to see how uncoordinated we are in many ways. Yeah. And me as a former swimmer to boot, like it's a little bit, it's humbling to say the least.
No, for sure. Fighting is very much the same.
Yeah.
Way,
I've never gotten into it, but I know that you have, and I know you had Jocko on and all that stuff.
Yeah. I've gotten into it pretty heavy the last, 7 or 8 years, but on active duty, I know it's different now. I know the combatives program is quite a bit more robust.
A buddy of mine was the chief over there for a while and like got to travel around everywhere, and he's taking it really seriously. He's really good.
Oh, it's awesome. The other question I wanted to start out with is spending so much time in a swimming pool, though, looking at a black line and guiding off of that. That was by far my biggest struggle at Buds was guiding and swimming in open water, and it took me a while to figure out how to do that.
Different.
No matter how fast you swim, if you're swimming twice as far because your guiding sucks. Was that at all a challenge for you?
It was, but I was lucky that I did a couple open water races in my competitive swimming days. So I was lucky to have a little bit of experience with it. And also in Bud, you're doing combat side stroke. I wish we did freestyle. I would have broke all these records.
Yeah.
I got so much shit in this stuff. We got so much to talk about. It's fun. But it was, I think I was an okay guider. My second Olympics is when they added the 10K open water swim to the Olympic Games. 10K open water, that shit's far as fuck, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was going to do that. I did one 10K. And at the time, this is when we wore the bodysuits, which are not quite wetsuits, are not for that intended purpose, but you get hot. So I did one down in, I think, at Fort Lauderdale, something like that, down in Florida. I got my ass kicked. I went out fast. Yeah. I was like in the lead at the 5K and then just totally died. And got my ass kicked and was overheated. And I'm like, dude, I'm just not doing this again. Yeah. This isn't my discipline. I'll stick with the pool races. Yeah. We're temperature controlled, prima donna stuff.
Nothing trying
but
to
like the open water guys and my teammate at SC, who's from Tunisia, he ended up winning the 10K at a couple of different Olympics. And he actually won the 1500, won the gold medal. So really proud of him and what he did, and to be able to compete against him was really, really cool. Yeah. Lots of things to dive in there.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, we'll definitely get into it. Just a quick lightning round that I like to ask everybody. What's the last book you read?
I'm reading one right now. on Andrew Jackson. I just started it. Last one I read was on Thomas Jefferson. I think I picked the wrong one. I was looking forward to more of his like professional life, and I sort of burned out at the point where it just talked a lot of bit about his background and what have you. I also read recently David McCullough's 1776, which I loved. That was amazing. I mean, I think that was the one, the most recent one I read a couple weeks ago, cover to cover. Remarkable to see that time in history at our country's formation, and I think even more remarkable to learn about George Washington's failings as a general and as a leader. It's not something we talk about, but I think it's something that's useful for any person who aspires to do something special. How reluctant he was to take command, how the Continental Congress put that on him and said, you're in charge, and his lack of confidence that he could actually do it, his lack of experience as a general. He hadn't put on a uniform for something like 20 years, and he's like sort of brought out of retirement, so to speak, to be the general, to take control. How much he got his ass kicked by the British, how we had hundreds of British ships sailing into New York, going up the Hudson. Like, that's just remarkable to even think about. There should be a movie about, based on that book, because sure, we have, the Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot, and all that stuff, which is cool, and I love that movie. But I think there's a whole other part of this history that we haven't really told the story of. And then obviously the book essentially ends with George Washington crossing the Delaware on Christmas night to attack the British, and that was sort of the turning point. I was let down because the book ends, and it's like, and that's the end of like 1776. And I'm like, oh shit, this is literally 1776. It doesn't like go beyond that. And I was at the edge of my seat.
Yeah. Do you find yourself being the most interested in that period of time?
I go in and out of different things. So I'm very interested in that period in time. Prior to that, I took a lot of the reading recommendations from Jocko. I read About Face. That piqued a lot of curiosity. So many learnings from Hackworth on the battlefield, but also just in terms of our experience in war and our conflicts that we've gotten into, ranging from Korea to Vietnam to the modern ones that we were a part of. And it's just remarkable how my own perception of the conflicts that we should get into has changed through my own experience, but also how things really haven't changed that much in terms of like, Hackworth's disappointment with how the leadership was handling Vietnam. I can't help but question, like, what did we really accomplish in Korea? What did we really accomplish in Vietnam? What have we really accomplished in, any of these conflicts, the same ones that we've done, been a part of? And so I think there's something pretty serious that we as a country and our leaders need to, figure out.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers, but I think that there's a diagnosable issue across history, at least post-World War II.